Prayer, in my opinion, is nothing else than an intimate sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him who we know loves us. So do not be anxious, but let yourself be loved by the love of Jesus and of His Holy Spirit. And a beautiful way to let Jesus love you is to pray the Rosary. A few years ago, I had gone for a 30-day Ignatian retreat at Dhyanashram in Kolkata. It was a wonderful experience of prayer and transformation. The Ignatian retreat is divided into 4 weeks with 4 major themes: Incarnation and God's mercy, the public ministry of Jesus, the passion of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, together with a contemplation on God's love. At the end of that wonderful experience, while thanking the Jesuit community, I remember mentioning how the whole Ignatian retreat, 30-day retreat, is actually the Rosary, the 4 mysteries of the Rosary in 4 weeks. In a lighter vein, I said, what takes 30 days for God to give to the Jesuits, He gives to simple Christians in a couple of hours as they pray the whole Rosary. Praying the whole Rosary is as good as making a 30-day retreat because of the intercession of our Blessed Mother. The Rosary, though clearly Marian in character, is at heart Christocentric prayer, said Pope John Paul II. The Rosary is a compendium of the Gospel. With the Rosary, we Christians sit at the school of Mary and we are led to contemplate the beauty on the face of Christ and to experience the depths of His love. With the Rosary, the Christian people sits at the school of Mary and is led to contemplate the beauty on the face of Christ and to experience the depths of His love. Dear friends, history is replete with examples of the amazing power of the Holy Rosary. With Saint Dominic in 1208 defeating the Albigensians, to the victory of the European Navy over the invading Turks on 7th October 1571, to the defeat of communism through the Rosary Crusade called for by John Paul II on 25th March 1984, the list goes on and on. Look at what took place in Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945.
At 8:15 on the morning of August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Japan. The blast wave was felt as far away as 37 miles. 2/3 of the city's buildings were destroyed. Although no official figure exists, it is estimated that between 80,000 to 140,000 people were killed instantly in the blast. The hundreds of fires, ignited by the thermal pulse, combined to produce a firestorm that had incinerated everything within 4.4 miles of ground zero. Yet, incredibly, less than a half-mile away from ground zero, 8 German Jesuit priests staggered out of their home, one of the few buildings still standing in that area, with only relatively minor injury. Later, all 8 of these men would be examined by US Army medical experts, along with the other survivors of the blast. According to these medical reports, the Jesuit priests suffered no signs of elevated radiation, or indeed any of the other ill effects experienced by the other survivors. Speaking on behalf of all 8 men, 30-year-old Father Hubert Schiffer had only one explanation.
We believe that we survived because we were living the message of Fatima.
I would like to narrate another dream of Don Bosco called the Dream of 2 Columns.
In May of 1862, St. John Bosco had a prophetic dream about the church in these times, the battle and the victory. There was a vast expanse of water with an innumerable fleet of ships in battle array. The prows of these ships were formed into sharp, spear-like points, so that wherever they were thrust, they pierced and completely destroyed. These ships were armed with cannons, rifles, bombs, and other arms of all kinds. They also had books, and they advanced against a ship much bigger and higher than themselves, trying to dash against it with the prows or to burn it, or in some way do every possible harm. As escorts to that majestic, fully equipped ship, there were many smaller ships, which received commands by signal and carried out movements to defend themselves from the opposing fleet. In the midst of the immense expanse of sea, two mighty columns of great height arose a little distance from one another. On the top of one there was the statue of the Immaculate Virgin, from whose feet hung a large placard with the inscription, "Help of Christians." On the other, which was much higher and bigger, stood a host of great size, proportionate to the column, and beneath was another placard with the words, "Salvation of the Faithful." The supreme commander on the big ship is the Sovereign Pontiff. He, on seeing the fury of the enemies and the evils among which his faithful find themselves, determines to summon around himself the captains of the smaller ships to hold a council and decide on what is to be done. All the captains come aboard and gather around the Pope. They hold a meeting, but meanwhile the wind and the waves gather in storm, so they are sent back to control their own ships. There comes a short lull. For a second time, the Pope gathers the captains together around him while the flagship goes on its course. But the frightful storm returns. The Pope stands at the helm and all his energies are directed to steering the ship toward those two columns, from the top of which and from every side of which are hanging numerous anchors and big hooks fastened to chains. All the enemy ships move to attack it, and they try in every way to stop it and to sink it, some with writings or books or inflammable materials, of which they are full, others with guns, with rifles and with rams. The battle rages ever more relentlessly. The enemy prows thrust violently, but their efforts and impact prove useless. They make attempts in vain and waste all their labor and ammunition. The big ship goes safely and smoothly on its way. Sometimes it happens that, struck by formidable blows, it gets large, deep gaps in its sides. But no sooner is the harm done than a gentle breeze blows from the two columns, and the cracks close up, and the gaps are stopped immediately. Meanwhile, the guns of the assailants are blown up. The rifles and other arms and prows are broken. Many ships are shattered and sink into the sea. Then the frenzied enemies strive to fight hand to hand, with fists, with blows, with blasphemy and with curses. All at once the Pope falls gravely wounded. Immediately those who are with him run to help him and they lift him up. A second time the Pope is struck. He falls again and he dies. A shout of victory and of joy rings out amongst the enemies. From their ships an unspeakable mockery arises. But hardly is the pontiff dead than another pope takes his place. The pilots, having met together, have elected the pope so promptly that the news of the death of the pope coincides with the news of the election of the successor. The adversaries begin to lose courage. The new pope, putting the enemy to rout and overcoming every obstacle, guides the ship right up to the two pillars and comes to rest between them. He anchors the ship to the columns. Then a great convulsion takes place. All the ships that until then had fought against the Pope's ship are scattered. They flee away, collide, and break into pieces one against another. Some sink and try to sink others. Several small ships that had fought gallantly for the Pope race to be the first to bind themselves to those two columns. Many other ships, having retreated through fear of the battle, cautiously watch from far away. The wrecks of the broken ships, having been scattered in the whirlpools of the sea, they in their turn sail in good earnest to those two columns, and having reached them, they make themselves fast to the hooks hanging down from them, and there they remain safe, together with the principal ship on which is the Pope. Over the sea, there reigns a great calm. St. John Bosco explains his dream, saying the enemy ships are persecutions. The most serious trials for the Church are near at hand. Her enemies are represented by the ships that tried to sink the ship if they could. Only two means are left to save her amidst so much confusion: devotion to Mary Most Holy and frequent communion. Making use of every means and doing our best to practice them, and having them practiced everywhere and by everyone.
This dream of Don Bosco on 30th of May 1862 was a prophecy. I would like to narrate about another dream of Don Bosco called 100 years later, when Vatican II would begin. It would cause such a storm that the church was almost threatened to break up. Precisely then, God raised up in the church Saint Pope John Paul II, who steered the church through turbulent times to the safety of the Eucharist and the Rosary. Shot by Muhammad Ali Akka on 13th of May, Our Lady would hold him up. Pope himself would say, one hand pulled the trigger another hand guided the bullet. Pope would declare 2003 as the year of the Rosary and 2005 as the year of the Eucharist, anchoring the Church onto the solid pillars of Rosary and the Eucharist, the two columns. Pope would give us his final two encyclicals, one on the Rosary and the other on the Eucharist. Rightly then, he would die in the year of the Eucharist on the eve of the Feast of Divine Mercy. Immediately comes Pope Benedict XVI, taking the Church to pristine purity of doctrine and holiness. Of the Rosary, Pope John Paul II would declare, "The Rosary is our daily meeting which neither I nor the Blessed Virgin neglect. It is my favorite prayer, marvelous in its simplicity, marvelous in its depth. Pray all the 20 decades and whenever possible, pray it before the Blessed Sacrament." Have you heard how guns fell to the Rosary in Philippines Revolution in 1986? Let's watch.
Over 2 million Filipinos gathered along EDSA, or the Epifanio de los Santos Avenue in Metro Manila. It was to demand an end to the oppressive rule of the Marcos dictatorship. It was a massive peaceful protest that was aimed at restoring democracy in one of Asia's oldest democratic societies. It was a historic moment that inspired the world. Many, especially the people who were there in EDSA, have said that it was magical. EDSA empowered the marginalized people for a brief inspiring moment. The Filipino people from all walks of life came together to overthrow a tyrant in the hopes of reviving democracy.
No wonder Saint Louis de Montfort would state in his classic book, The Secret of the Rosary, "If you say the Rosary faithfully until death, I do assure you that in spite of the gravity of your sins, you shall receive a never-fading crown of glory. For even if you are now on the brink of damnation, even if you have one foot in hell, even if you have sold your soul to the devil, sooner or later you will be converted and will amend your life and save your soul if you pray the Rosary devoutly every day of your life." This is attested to in the life of Blessed Bartolo Longo.
Blessed Bartolo Longo is most famous for his dramatic conversion from a satanic cult and, under the guidance of the Mother of God, for founding a magnificent temple to Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary in Pompeii. Known as the Apostle of the Rosary, Blessed Bartolo Longo was an Italian lawyer whose dramatic conversion from the occult, his rejection of Spiritism, and the search for his vocation within the Catholic Church has left us a striking and memorable example of Our Lady's powerful intercession for those who trust in her.
The inspiration was strong. A voice suggested to him, "If you want salvation, spread the rosary to all around you. It is the promise of Mary. Whoever propagates the rosary shall be saved."
Pope St. John Paul II beatified him on October 26, 1980, calling him the Apostle of the Rosary. The Pope would end his encyclical on the Rosary with Blessed Longo's supplication to Our Lady of the Holy Rosary. O Blessed Rosary of Mary, sweet chain which unites us to God, bond of love which unites us to the angels, tower of salvation against the assaults of hell, safe port in our universal shipwreck, we will never abandon you. You will be our comfort in the hour of death. Yours our final kiss as life ebbs away. And the last word from our lips will be your sweet name, O Queen of the Rosary of Pompeii. O dearest Mother, O refuge of sinners, O sovereign consoler of the afflicted. May you be everywhere blessed today and always, on earth and in heaven. During these days of the retreat, pray all the 20 decades daily. And even if you cannot do anything else, at least please keep the Rosary with you always and experience for yourself the amazing power of the Holy Rosary. A beautiful way to contemplate the face of Jesus in the school of Mary.
O Queen of the Holy Rosary, O bless us as we pray. and offer thee our roses in garlands day by day, while from our Father's garden with loving hearts and bold we gather to thine honor buds white and red and gold. Queen of the Holy Rosary, each mystery blends with thine, the sacred life of Jesus in every step divine. Thy soul was his fair garden, thy virgin breast his throne, thy thoughts his faithful mirror, reflecting him above. Oh, bless us as we pray, and offer thee our roses in garlands day by day, while from our Father's garden with loving hearts and bold we gather to thine